Helen of Greece was born in Sparta, the heart of ancient Laconia, though her birth year has been lost to time. Myths tell that she was born from an egg laid by her mother, Leda, after the great god Zeus visited her in the form of a swan. Some say she was the daughter of Zeus and the goddess Nemesis instead, but all stories agree that Helen's birth was touched by divine mystery. What made this child of the gods so extraordinary? How did her beauty grow to become the spark that set nations ablaze? And could a single woman, born into a world ruled by heroes and kings, truly change the course of history forever? From the very beginning, Helen's life was surrounded by awe and danger. Her beauty was said to shine even in infancy, and poets claimed that the heavens themselves blessed her cradle. She grew up in the royal court of Sparta, surrounded by luxury and legend. Her mother, Leda, was known for her grace and kindness, while her mortal father, King Tyndarus, ruled Sparta with wisdom and caution. Yet Helen's birth also carried the shadow of prophecy. Many believed that her beauty would one day cause great conflict. As she played among the palace gardens and learned the ways of nobility, the gods watched closely, for this child of both heaven and earth would soon alter the fate of empires. Helen's story begins with the union of gods and mortals, a theme that lies at the heart of many Greek legends. Her father was said to be Zeus, the ruler of Mount Olympus, who often took different forms when he descended to the human world. In Helen's case, Zeus transformed into a swan, pursued by an eagle across the skies, and sought shelter with Queen Leda of Sparta. The goddess Nemesis is sometimes mentioned in older tales, yet it was Leda who raised the child as her own, never fully knowing whether the child she held came from heaven or earth. From this strange encounter came not just Helen, but also her siblings, the heroic twins Castor and Pollux, and her sister Clytemnestra. Their shared divine blood made them stand out among mortals. Legends say that when Leda laid the egg that held Helen, it glowed faintly with the light of Olympus, and even the priests of Sparta later claimed to have seen its shell hanging in the temple as a sacred relic. To the people of Greece, Helen was not an ordinary princess. She was a living symbol of beauty and fate, born between two worlds, the mortal and the divine. The poets would later say that she carried within her the gifts and the curses of her father Zeus, charm that could move nations, and a destiny that no mortal could escape. As Helen grew into her youth, her beauty became the talk of Greece. Poets claimed that even the sunlight seemed gentler when it touched her face. Raised in the palace of Sparta, she learned the grace and discipline expected of royalty, dance, music, and the art of conversation. Her brothers, Castor and Pollux, taught her to ride horses and to be fearless, for Spartan women were trained to be strong in both mind and body. But beauty often invites danger. When Helen was still very young, the Athenian hero Theseus saw her during a visit to Sparta and was struck by her divine charm. Believing that such beauty could only belong beside a god, he decided to take her for himself. With his friend Pirithous, he devised a daring plan. One day, while the Spartan king was away, Theseus seized Helen and carried her off to Athens, hiding her with his mother, Aethra. The abduction set Sparta into turmoil. Castor and Pollux gathered warriors and marched to rescue their sister. In the chaos that followed, Theseus was trapped in the underworld during another reckless adventure, leaving Helen behind. Her brothers finally brought her home safely, restoring peace to Sparta. This early ordeal marked Helen's first taste of conflict, a sign of the destiny that would follow her. Even as a child, her beauty had the power to start wars and unsettle kingdoms. As Helen reached marriageable age, word of her beauty spread across every corner of Greece. Princes, kings, and heroes from distant lands came to Sparta to seek her hand. They brought treasures, promises, and the hope of winning the heart of the woman said to be the most beautiful in the world. The great hall of King Tyndarus overflowed with noble guests, each determined to become Helen's husband. Yet Tyndarus faced a serious problem. If he chose one suitor, the others might turn against Sparta and start a war. It was Odysseus, the clever prince of Ithaca, who proposed a solution. He suggested that all the suitors swear a solemn oath to defend and protect the man chosen to marry Helen, no matter what happened in the future. Tyndarus agreed, and the men took the sacred vow before the gods, pledging loyalty and unity. This promise would later be known as the Oath of Tyndarus. When the time came to choose, Helen selected Menelaus, brother of Agamemnon, the mighty king of Mycenae. He was brave, wealthy, and patient, and soon became the new king of Sparta through marriage. The union seemed peaceful, blessed by the gods and admired by all. But hidden beneath the harmony was the faint whisper of destiny, a reminder that oaths, once sworn before the gods, could not be broken without consequence. The seeds of future conflict had quietly been sown. With her marriage to Menelaus, Helen became the queen of Sparta. Their union brought together two powerful royal lines, one born of mortal kings, the other touched by divine heritage. The people of Sparta celebrated their queen, whose grace and charm seemed to bless the land itself. For a time, peace reigned across the kingdom, and Helen's life appeared filled with stability and affection. Menelaus ruled with strength and fairness, while Helen became known for her kindness and beauty that inspired poets and artists alike. Together, they had a daughter named Hermione, whose laughter filled the palace halls. Some stories claim that Helen bore other children, but Hermione remained her most beloved. In these early years, Helen played the part of a devoted wife and mother, admired by her people and respected by her court. Yet even as harmony surrounded her, the gods had not forgotten Helen's destiny. Her father, Zeus, often looked down from Olympus, aware that the beauty he had granted her would one day set great powers against one another. The peace of Sparta was only the calm before a storm that would echo through history. For now, though, Helen's days were bright. The Queen of Sparta walked her palace gardens unaware that far away on the plains of Troy, a young prince named Paris was about to make a choice that would change her life and the fate of an entire world. Far from Sparta, in the land of Troy, a prince named Paris was tending his father's flocks when the gods themselves drew him into their quarrels. To settle a dispute among three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, Zeus appointed Paris to judge who was the fairest. Each goddess offered him a gift to sway his choice. Hera promised power. Athena offered wisdom and victory in war, but Aphrodite tempted him with love, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, captivated by Aphrodite's promise, chose her as the winner. From that moment, his destiny intertwined with Helen's. Aphrodite told him that the woman she promised was Helen of Sparta, wife of King Menelaus. Ignoring the danger such a pursuit would bring, Paris prepared to journey across the sea, guided by both desire and divine will. Meanwhile, in Sparta, Helen sensed a strange unease, as though the gods were whispering her name. When Paris finally arrived under the guise of a guest, his charm and youth fascinated her. Some say Aphrodite clouded her mind with enchantment. Others believe Helen's heart simply longed for something beyond her royal life. The fateful choice made by Paris, and Helen's eventual surrender to love or fate, would ignite one of the greatest wars in human legend. Neither could yet see how their actions would turn beauty into ruin, love into loss, and peace into ashes. When Paris arrived in Sparta, he was welcomed with the warmth reserved for royal guests. Menelaus treated him with kindness, never imagining that his visitor's presence would soon destroy their peace. Helen, curious about the young Trojan prince, found in him a charm unlike that of any man she had known. Whether through Aphrodite's divine influence or her own restless heart, she soon became drawn to him. One evening, as the sea breeze swept through the palace, Paris spoke softly of Troy, of its towers, its people, and its beauty. He promised her a life filled with passion and adventure, far from the duties of the Spartan throne. When Menelaus departed for Crete on a royal visit, Paris saw his chance. Helen joined him, leaving behind her home, her husband, and her child. Some storytellers claim Paris stole her away by force. Others say she went willingly, captivated by love or fate. The poets never agreed, only that her departure launched 1,000 ships and set Greece ablaze. As their vessels sailed across the Aegean Sea, Helen watched the horizon fade, torn between fear and excitement. The winds carried them toward Troy, but also toward destiny. The oath of Tyndarus would soon be remembered, and kings across Greece would gather their armies, united by one promise: to bring Helen back, no matter the cost. When news spread that Helen had gone with Paris, Greece erupted in outrage. Menelaus, filled with grief and fury, called upon the oath sworn years before by her suitors. One by one, kings and warriors answered his call: Agamemnon of Mycenae, Odysseus of Ithaca, Achilles of Phthia, and many more. Together they formed a massive army, bound by honor and vengeance, and set sail for Troy to bring Helen home. The gods themselves took sides in the conflict. Hera and Athena, furious with Paris for rejecting them, aided the Greeks, while Aphrodite and Apollo favored the Trojans. The skies darkened with divine quarrels as mortals prepared for battle. From the shores of Aulis, the Greek fleet waited for favorable winds, but none came until Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter, Iphigenia, to appease the goddess Artemis. Only then did the winds rise, carrying the 1,000 ships toward Troy. Inside Troy's high walls, Helen stood beside Paris, watching the horizon as sails filled the sea. Some said she felt pride. Others claimed sorrow shadowed her heart. She had become both a prize and a curse, the cause of war between nations. As the first arrows flew and swords clashed, the poets would later write that no war had ever burned so fiercely for the sake of one woman. The fate of heroes, cities, and gods now turned upon the name of Helen of Troy. Life within the golden walls of Troy was not the dream Helen had imagined. Though she was treated as a queen beside Paris, whispers followed her through every corridor. The Trojan people blamed her for the endless war that raged beyond their gates. Mothers cursed her name for the sons they lost, and even the elders spoke of her beauty as a curse rather than a blessing. Paris adored her, showering her with gifts and affection, yet Helen's heart grew heavy. She missed her daughter, Hermione, and the peaceful gardens of Sparta. Often she would stand upon the walls of Troy, gazing toward the sea where the Greek ships lay in waiting. There she watched her past and her future collide in a storm she could not escape. Homer wrote that Helen's soul was torn between guilt and love. At times, she despised Paris for the destruction he had brought, while at others, she pitied him for his youth and recklessness. When Hector, Paris's noble brother, confronted her, he treated her with compassion rather than scorn. Helen mourned his death as if he were her own kin, calling him the only Trojan who had shown her kindness. Inside Troy, Helen lived as both goddess and prisoner, worshipped for her beauty, condemned for her choices. Her tears fell for both sides of the battlefield, for every life lost in a war that bore her name. After 10 long years of battle, Troy's fate was sealed by a clever deception. The Greeks pretended to retreat, leaving behind a giant wooden horse as a supposed offering to the gods. Inside, the hollow figure hid the finest warriors of Greece, including Odysseus and Menelaus. Despite warnings from the prophet Laocoon, the Trojans brought the horse into their city as a trophy of victory. That night, under the cover of darkness, the Greeks emerged and opened the gates for their waiting army. As fire and death consumed the once great city, Helen found herself caught between two worlds once more. Some stories say she helped the Greeks, signaling their approach with a torch from the city's highest tower. Others claim she hid in terror, praying for forgiveness as Troy burned around her. When Menelaus finally entered the city, sword in hand, he sought her out with vengeance in his heart. But when Helen stood before him, her beauty disarmed his rage. According to legend, she dropped her robe from her shoulders, and Menelaus, overwhelmed by her sight, let his sword fall. The war that began because of her now ended in silence between them. Troy lay in ashes, and Helen's name would forever be tied to its fall. Whether she was a victim of divine will or the author of her own fate, the world would never look at her, or love, the same way again. After the flames of Troy died down, Menelaus brought Helen back to Sparta. Their journey home was filled with silence and ghosts of memory. The sea that once carried her away now bore her back, not as a queen of adventure, but as a woman scarred by 10 years of war. When they reached their homeland, the people of Sparta were divided. Some rejoiced. Others whispered that their queen had brought ruin to Greece. Menelaus, weary from years of battle, did not punish her. Perhaps it was love that softened his heart, or perhaps he too understood that the will of the gods had shaped their lives. Helen resumed her place beside him as queen, though the court felt colder, quieter than before. She moved through the palace like a shadow of her former self, kind yet distant, as if burdened by memories that could not fade. Despite everything, peace slowly returned. Their daughter Hermione had grown into a woman, and her presence helped to heal the wounds left by the war. Visitors who saw Helen in her later years said her beauty remained, though it had taken on a gentler, more sorrowful glow. In the evenings, she often walked along the palace terraces, gazing toward the horizon. The gods had granted her survival, but at a price: the memory of every life lost in her name. Even after her return to Sparta, stories about Helen began to take on lives of their own. Across the Greek world, poets, travelers, and philosophers debated what had truly happened during the Trojan War. One tale, told by the historian Herodotus, claimed that Helen never went to Troy at all. Instead, he said, the real Helen had been taken by the gods to Egypt, while a spirit or phantom of her likeness was sent to Troy in her place. In this version, the Egyptians kept Helen safe and treated her with respect, waiting until the war ended to return her to Menelaus. Some believed this explained why the Greeks had fought for so long, chasing a vision rather than a woman. Others dismissed it as myth, insisting that the true Helen had stood behind the walls of Troy, torn between guilt and longing. These differing tales turned Helen into something more than mortal. To some, she was the victim of divine trickery; to others, a symbol of beauty's dangerous power. In Egypt, temples were said to have been built in her honor, and sailors claimed to have seen her reflection upon the Nile at dusk. Whether she lived in Troy or Egypt, Helen's story became larger than life, a tale of love, loss, and the endless pull between destiny and choice. Her name would echo across ages, carried by wind, water, and song. In the centuries that followed the Trojan War, Helen's story transformed from legend into worship. Across Greece, shrines were built in her honor, where people prayed not only to remember her beauty, but to seek her favor. At Sparta, the most famous of these was the Hellenion, a sanctuary said to have been built on the very spot where she and Menelaus were believed to have been buried or honored as divine beings. Many Greeks came to see Helen not as a sinner or a victim, but as a goddess of beauty, renewal, and destiny. Women prayed to her for love and protection, while sailors called upon her name for calm seas and safe passage. The poets wrote that after her death, Helen was taken to the Isles of the Blessed, a peaceful realm where heroes and favored mortals lived forever in the light of the gods. Philosophers and storytellers debated her nature. Was she mortal or divine? Could her spirit still walk among the living? Some said that she was seen near Sparta, appearing in a glow of soft light, her presence gentle and forgiving. Others believed she had become one with the stars, her radiance lighting the night sky. Through worship and story, Helen became eternal, no longer the cause of a great war, but a symbol of the mysterious bond between beauty, fate, and forgiveness. For thousands of years, Helen's image has lived on through the words of poets and the hands of artists. In the ancient world, her story inspired countless plays, poems, and sculptures. Homer's Iliad portrayed her as sorrowful and self-aware, while Euripides later reimagined her as a woman wronged by fate, trapped between love and duty. Painters depicted her standing upon the walls of Troy, her golden hair shining as flames rose behind her. During the Renaissance, Helen became a symbol of beauty's perfection, the ideal woman whose face, as the poet Christopher Marlowe wrote, launched 1,000 ships. Her name appeared in paintings, operas, and epics, not as a villain but as a muse. Each generation reinterpreted her story, seeing in her their own questions about love, power, and destiny. In modern times, Helen's legend continues to inspire films, novels, and art across the world. Some portray her as a victim of divine manipulation, others as a woman of strength who defied her fate. Her name has come to represent both the glory and the danger of beauty, a reminder that what captivates the heart can also destroy it. No matter the era, Helen remains eternal in imagination. Her story bridges the line between myth and memory, a tale retold for every age seeking to understand how love and choice can shape the rise and fall of empires. The final chapters of Helen's story are wrapped in both mystery and reverence. After years of peace in Sparta, her life drew to a quiet close, far removed from the battles and legends that had once surrounded her name. Some ancient writers said that Helen passed away in Sparta, the land of her birth, while others claimed she ascended to the heavens, guided by the gods who had shaped her destiny from the beginning. Her death is said to have occurred peacefully, though no exact date remains. The people of Sparta mourned her not as a queen of conflict, but as a woman who had endured the burden of divine beauty and mortal sorrow. In some traditions, Helen was carried to the Isles of the Blessed, where she was reunited with her brothers, Castor and Pollux, and her husband Menelaus, together again in a realm untouched by pain or war. Poets wrote that even in death, Helen's radiance did not fade. Her spirit was said to appear near the rivers of Sparta at dawn, surrounded by light, blessing those who spoke her name with kindness. Others believed her soul took its place among the stars, forever watching over the world that had once fought in her name. In the end, Helen of Troy's story became more than myth. It became a reflection on love, destiny, and the price of beauty, a tale that still whispers through the ages, eternal as the heavens themselves. What do you think about Helen of Troy? Was Helen a divine beauty, a woman whose charm inspired empires, and whose name became immortal through song and legend? Or was she a tragic figure, cursed by the gods, blamed for a war she never truly wanted, and remembered more for destruction than for love? Was her legacy one of power and destiny, or of silence and sorrow, buried beneath the ruins of Troy and the echoes of history? Thank you so much for watching.